the best way is irrelevant. I know a lot of our like, we're overthinkers are like, well, I'm just going to find the best, the most efficient, the least hilly, the best way that I can succeed here is where your mind is at. And yes, that serves you in other ways. But the best way to do a thing is to just do it.
Ideal conditions are not going to present themselves that often.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Kelsey.
Well, hi, guys. I'm Rachel, and it is an amazing week to be alive.
It is. It's an amazing week to be alive. But we do have, an uplifting episode for you guys today.
I think we do. I think it's just the push you need. I think it's motivational, and I think it also will, as a lot of our episodes do, make you double back and be like, hey, is this working for me? Because sometimes, it is easy to get in a rut and just kind of not look at your behaviors with a microscope and just kind of accept them as who you are. And it might not be working great for you, and it doesn't need to just be who you are, because we're freaking
I really love to look at behaviors that are quote unquote who you are. Almost knocked over my whole other computer trying to get my air bunnies up. But the thing is that it's one of those things. So everything in my mind is a form of balance. So don't mind me for explaining it this way. But it's just who I am. It has a time and place, because there are some aspects of your personality or behaviors that you have that you do need to accept, and they are just part of your life, and they are just who you are. And I hope that those behaviors are serving you and are working for you, and that's why you have decided that they are concrete, and you love them about yourself, and anyone else who doesn't needs to either accept them or hit the road. And I have some of those that I'm like, that's who I am and that's who I'm going to be. And one of those is just like my fiery personality that I like kind of question everything. Like, that is who I am. And whenever I've tried to enter in relationships where I've tried to water that down a little bit, I feel like I'm losing pieces of myself, because I'll go through like not saying something as fiery because I don't want it to come off as like argumentative or bitchy or something along those lines, where I'm like, I'm not trying to argue. I'm passionate about a topic, and I actually love my passion. So I'm not going to give that up. I love my passion. It's one of my favorite things about me, and it served me in many ways. So if that doesn't work for you, you got to hit the road. However, a form of that can be being very critical of people. And that is something that is part of that, but I want to work on, because I don't want to be very critical of others. And that is a part of my personality. While I notice things, I don't want to notice them in a particularly critical way. And I've decided that that's something I want to work on. So when it comes to behaviors that we have, to wrap it back around, that we have decided are historically part of us or something that we have done, you have a decision right now, today, and every moment from here on out, to decide if they work for you and if they don't work for you, and what pieces of them maybe do and what pieces of them don't. And what we're talking about today is overcomplicating as a form of self-sabotage. And when we talk about overcomplicating, those are for people who are thinkers. They're planners, and there are so many strengths to that personality type that serve you in many, many ways, and they have helped you in your life. But there are pieces to those types of personalities that are not serving you and that are harming you. And only you can decide which one of those, which one falls in which place, which one's harming me, which one's helping me. But the pieces that are not serving you, you have to decide, this is a piece and I'm going to work on it. We're going to give you steps on how to work on it.
I love the idea of identifying our own versions of self-sabotage, because we all have them.
Oh God, we do.
I mean,
every one of us.
Yeah. I mean, there's nobody that's like, oh, self-sabotage, never heard of it. I've never engaged in that in any form in my life. We just all do it in different ways. And you're right that it's like how your personality sort of leans what kinds of things you hone in on and what you consider yourself good at. Those are also some ways in which we can use to self-sabotage, which is like a real freaking
It's a conundrum. What is it? What was it? What are you not mad at me for?
that you only air bunnied just so you could show your nails.
Oh.
And there's certain points in the mic where your mic is matching your nails and stuff, and it's such a vibe that you washed your hair. I should just, if I could just do a black screen, you guys just enjoy Kelsey because she is so good today. She is so good. She's so put together. I'm here for you, and I
Oh,
love
thanks.
your look today, and you go, just girl.
Oh, thanks.
Anyway,
I'm leaning into the summer with the nails. I usually don't go like bright colors, but I felt a vibe on it and I went for it.
love, and may copy. I just,
Tune in for next week when Rachel
best
has the nail color.
best friends and sisters, they get that. It's just like,
100%.
and I don't have to explain it. I don't even have to let you know. I don't even
No.
have to let you know, like, oh, hey, change yours because I'm gonna copy them. I'm just gonna show up. And
Yeah. No, here's the thing. If you actually have it's a women like when women are really rooting for you though, it's like when you find a good thing that you like a good self tanner or like a good camera or like whatever. You share that, you're like, I gotta tell you about this thing. I'm not trying to hold it close to chest. I'm trying to share it with you. So you have the information I'm working with too, because I'm like, you got to get this. It's greatest. Your skin's going to feel amazing. I found this like eye cream that I was obsessed with. I bought it for Rachel. I was like, you got to have this.
yes, it's greatest. I love it's
Right?
great. I mean, I love your examples too. Self tanner, cameras. What the I mean,
Let me
yeah,
just
all
so
of
I don't
what?
the
What?
reason why I thought of that was because Isley, you guys might be familiar with her. She just bought a new camera and she was asking some other influencers who like have great quality lifting videos. She's trying to figure out which ones they were using. And I guess one of her gave them like false information. I know. I'm not gonna say anyone's handle. But and then another one was like, "Oh girl, let me tell you, like you got to get this one. It's the best quality whatever." Cuz she wants to like improve the quality of some of her lifting videos. Like, they're not just using their phones anymore. But,
Oh,
when girls are like, "This is the one. This
we're
is how I
going
get the
back to
angle."
cameras now. We like came full circle. We were like, we
Yeah.
have cameras, and you have to go out on a weekend, and you just dump all the photos onto your Facebook all at once, and they're all embarrassing. And then now we're back. Okay, all right, it's
Yep.
fine. Cargo's back. Cameras are back.
Yeah.
Belly rings are back. Whatever, we'll do it again.
Mid
Whatever.
part is back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks great on you. I mean,
Jennifer Aniston's always been rocking it. I do have to say, Jennifer Aniston had a quote recently, which has been caught like a little bit of fire in the fitness industry. So this is why it's relevant. But she was talking about now, you guys know Miss Jennifer Aniston is timeless and she is amazing. But she was saying like something I wish I knew earlier about my health and fitness routine was that I don't need to be super sweaty to have had a good workout. I don't need to feel really sore for a couple days to consider myself to have had a good workout. And she's like, I wish I knew this earlier. And I was like, give her the mic. Give her the mic right now because like you don't need to feel exhausted, I think was her third one. To know that she had a good workout, that she took care of her body. And I was just like, we want these like tangible in every aspect. So we want these like tangible things where we're like, did I do the right thing? Yes or no? And it's like, you got to check in. You got to check in. You're looking for external validation when it is only internal.
oh man, story of my life. So the reason why we wanted to talk about overcomplicating as a form of self-sabotage today was because we were actually hit with like punched in the face with an example. Actually, to be fair, we're punched in the face with examples of this on the daily.
Yeah.
Being in a fitness group and, talking to 80,000 women every day. This comes up in so many forms, but this one really stuck with me because it was to a T. And I'm not going to say her name. We'll call her Sally. Let's call her Sally, should
Let's call her
we?
Sally.
Sorry to all the Sallys out there. We're not talking about you. But so there was a post went up when, we were coming close to Murph time, which is a workout that we do in honor of, the men and women who've lost their lives on Memorial Day weekend. We do this hero workout. And it's a difficult workout. It is, very emotional kind of thing. And we do it all together as a community. And we train, for an entire month. We give away a free training calendar so that everybody can, train and participate and be a part of it. So as this was coming closer, somebody posted, wondering like if everyone was getting nervous, like, oh, okay, how's everybody feeling? I'm getting a little nervous about it. And that's totally fine and normal. And Sally actually commented and let the woman know she had quit her calendar, her Murph prep on the second day. And it was really bothering her because she was very much looking forward to doing. She's trying to figure out where she was going to do her run, and she was seeing a lot of hills, and she was trying to figure out distances, and she was so overwhelmed by the amount of overthinking that she did in this 2 mile walk that she never even came back for day two. And she was so disappointed in herself. And that to me it was such a good example of what happens to people on micro and macro levels every single day when they're trying to make changes. And it was so hard to see her be so mad and upset at herself. And now we're all going to do this thing, and she's missed out on it, and she's not going to do it because, she had overcomplicated it to such a point that she self-sabotaged everything about it that made it great and fun, and had turned it into a totally negative experience. And it just rung so true to me I've done this multiple times with so many different things in my life. And I know other people can relate to it too on different levels. And so, I just want to talk about this for a minute, this tendency, and maybe how we can address it so that we aren't left disappointed where everybody's doing the workout and we wanted to do it and now we can't.
Yeah. And I think the thing, to point out there is this is a great example with, something that happened one day and then spiraled into the rest of the day and ultimately the thing that she was looking forward to, which I'm sure anyone who's been on a fitness journey ever can relate to, having a single day that is disrupted. The rest of, your progress, your routine, and then has ultimately sabotaged your goal, which was way down the road. But it only took kind of one thing or one step that put you over the edge, that you couldn't overcome in the moment. And it really starts with sometimes when you just start spiraling in those thoughts of like, I know she mentioned like, I had planned this 2 mile walk but like I can't do, where am I going to do the run? Like those are too hilly over there. Maybe that's too, busy over there. And it just became like seeing only obstacles, which became trying to have to figure out every way around one of those obstacles. And then it's just, beyond overcomplicated and stops you from doing the thing that you want to do.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because it's like you said, like one kind of day, 2 miles. I mean, how long could that take her? She was out for, a couple hours at most. And those couple hours were able to ruin the next 30 days of what she wanted to do. And that's just heartbreaking because it's just a blip. And if we could all have some strategies to sort of get that little blip under control to where it was manageable and it didn't spiral into the next 30 days, 40 days, 6 months, a year. Like, we all have these things where we're like, yeah, like 2 years ago, I overthought that. And I just never even, you know what? No, seriously. And, but if you can find, if you get some techniques to sort of stop that in its tracks, it doesn't have to become a thing. And it doesn't mean that you have to totally change your personality and not be, a detail orientated person anymore or a planner anymore. Like, you can take the good things about those qualities and maximize them. And you can take the not so great or not so valuable qualities about those things and say, like, I'm going to minimize those, or I'm going to find strategies to make sure that those stay in a good balance and in check. And I think, when it comes to this woman, what I asked her was, when I came back, I read her thing and she was so upset. And I said, I just wanted you to hear this quote because I felt like it really, resonated with me. And I told her, overcomplicating is a form of self-sabotage. And then I said, I just want to know what your worst case scenario was. I want to know, in the spiral of where am I going to run, and this part's too hilly and all of this, I want to know what was the worst possible thing that you imagined would happen in that scenario. And she came back and said, that I would be too, that I wouldn't finish, that I would quit the workout, and I would be too unfit to finish. And I think that can be put into any kind of category where we say, what is the biggest fear? It's failure, always. And that comes in many different forms. But in this case, failure for her meant not completing the workout that she set out to complete. And I had to pause on that for a minute, because the fear of failure literally created the failure, because you didn't actually do the workout. You didn't even try. That's the ultimate failure. However, if she would have quit the workout, let's say she quit the workout halfway in, okay? Let's say she chose to do, she chose to do a half marathon and she quit halfway in. Maybe she got, 50 air squats in, maybe she got 25 push-ups in, and maybe she ran, a quarter of a mile. That was the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario.
That was the worst case
that
scenario.
You quit, you didn't finish the workout, but you ended up with 50 air squats, 25 push-ups, and you ran a quarter mile. What's the alternative? The alternative is that you talked yourself so far out of it that you did zero. You did nothing. You did no air squats. You did no push-ups, and you didn't run at all. So how can that be more scary than quitting halfway through? What if you quit 5 minutes in and you only got 25 air squats in? Still better. I just, when you have to kind of phrase it in the way of, like, what am I afraid of?
Yeah.
Because sometimes the failure that you're afraid of is so much better than any of the alternatives of not doing it. And it's so clear when you put it out like that. Okay, if I fail and I quit 5 minutes into the workout, I will have done X. And if I didn't start it at all, I would have done nothing. Well, failing would have been better.
Quick interruption to tell you about some new things coming up for the new year.
No one does New Year's releases better than us. If you are looking for some unbelievably great fitting fitness wear for the new year, you've got goals, you want to be comfortable, you don't want your leggings going see-through, you don't want to have any embarrassing moments in your new gym in 2025, please let us outfit you. You are going to look so amazing. These new patterns that are coming,
so cute. Perfect to start the new year. And there's such a variety of different things depending on your style that day. For me, I'm different every day. I don't know if I'm going to want some rubber duckies. I don't want to know if I'm going to want to be a Viking. It could go either way. It's that extreme.
Every day I'm going to want coffee though. So those coffee are staple. Where my Zodiac girls at. Like, not only do we have some really fun new pattern releases for 2025, but we've got you covered on your basics. So we've got 4 new colors of a basic zip up. We've got 5 new colors of your slouchies that you guys absolutely love and say you wear every single day. So we've got it all for 2025. We just need you.
Head over to constantlyvariedgear.com and get your new things. You know, I really appreciate and love that point, because I think so many people get so caught up in, you know, the bigger thing of like not finishing or not doing as well as you wanted to do or whatever, when really the worst feeling would be sitting out. You know, the worst feeling would be not trying at all, because you said you wanted to do this thing. And no matter what, I know I've just seen it so many times that people who have been brave enough to attempt the thing, even if they didn't reach whatever goal that they set for themselves, or, you know, they did less than they wanted to, you still have such a feeling of pride and accomplishment, and you got what you really needed to get out of the experience. And when you do enough of those, you realize it, and then you can lean back on it, but maybe you haven't done enough of them yet, and you're not able to lean back on that experience. Because I know this has happened to me many times, where I've been so afraid to do something, or so afraid to be at a big competition, and so worried that I was going to look foolish or fail, or, you know, not jump in the water at Wadapalooza, or like what would be the worst case scenario for me. And the worst case scenario would be not starting. You know, that would really be the worst case scenario. When you boil it down, you know that scenario and that option is much worse than what you were able to accomplish. And the idea of that is really simplistic, right? When you break it down there and you say, like, well, you did do 25 air squats, or you did do you know, a quarter mile, or whatever it is. When you break it down and you say, well, this is more than 0, it's a simple math equation. It's really simple. But, you know, the human brain is designed to believe that complex solutions are superior to simple ones. So your brain is looking for, it can't be that simple. It can't just be put on your shoes and go, right? But it is that simple. You know, sometimes it is that simple to put on your shoes and go. And I know that, guys, like, we've all done this. Sometimes we're like looking to start a workout and you're like, but did I get all of my equipment out? Or like, did I do all of this thing? Like, what if I miss something? What if my shoe comes untied? And it's just like, start the clock. For me, sometimes it's just like, start the clock. Your mind has gone in 1,000 different directions. Like, you just need to start the clock. And really, when it comes to like just start, it's not what your brain is looking for, but it is what it needs.
Well, it's a comforting thought that at least we're not making this whole thing up.
We're not making this thing.
We're not, like, we don't have to gaslight ourselves into being like, why are you like this? What's the matter with you? You know, it is actually, complexity bias is a real thing. It is something that the brain does. It is on purpose. And there is some science behind why our brains tend more towards complex solutions rather than simple ones. However, that doesn't mean it's the right thing. I mean, we've talked before on these podcasts about, you know, how the brain works, and how sometimes you have to sort of trick it into doing the more effective thing, because it's not always working towards your best interests.
Not always serving you.
No, not really. I mean, you know, it's great and everything. It's telling your lungs to breathe and stuff, but like, also it has some things that, you know, it could work on. It could probably go to therapy once or twice. So, you know, when we're overcomplicating a situation inside our brain, there are actually chemically things going on. You know, you've probably heard of a lot of the chemicals that are associated with overcomplicating: dopamine, adrenaline, serotonin, and cortisol. Now, some of those you've heard as kind of feel good drugs. And then some of them are like, cortisol and adrenaline can go either way. But they all, as we talked about, on our last podcast, they all have their place. They just need to be kept in a correct balance. And when you activate these cynical loops of thought, basically what you're doing is stimulating a lot of adrenaline and dopamine and serotonin and cortisol, and what's happening is like your brain is getting some good hits from this, right? It's also causing you an immense amount of stress and fight or flight, but you're also getting some because this is what we want to do when we're trying to solve a problem, right? When we have a problem that we need to solve, we want adrenaline to come in and give us energy. And we want, dopamine to promote good problem solving. But it's just when this kind of, and serotonin comes when you our new options are emerging in your brain. So it's all good. It's all good. However, when you start ruminating and a loop of this problem solving produces no effects or solutions, the serotonin gets blocked and cortisol gets released. So that's why people feel like they're having a stress response. This is also anxiety, guys, in a nutshell. This is what anxious people feel on a regular basis, is that they're in rumination. They're stuck in rumination because they've activated all the problem solving chemicals, right? But because they have not gone through the actual solutions phase, all of the good feelings are blocked and the cortisol comes rushing in, and then you have analysis paralysis, which is just the inability to act because you have overthought something, and now you're so tired and stressed that you can't imagine working towards a solution. So it's real.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are like, yeah, that's me right now. Like just sitting there listening, being like, oh, that's me. Did that earlier today. Because it doesn't just need to like be a big, event like this. It doesn't, it happens all the time in small decisions that we're making or things that we're doing on a daily basis. But something that I really like to talk about all the time is that when you start practicing looking towards a solution and acting on it, you start practicing, you start building new pathways for your brain to be more solution focused. And for me, I know this is something I've been practicing for years, that is always looking for a solution to the point where when I have a conversation with someone, I want to know if they're in problem solving or if they're inventing. Where are we at? Because I'm in problem solving. I'm ready to jump in and help you solve this problem, but that's not always effective because it's really important sometimes to sit, especially with someone else's problems, and let them either vent and decide if they are ready for a solution yet. But it is absolutely something that you can practice with some of these small steps by making these small decisions. We're going to give you some actionable steps as we work through this. But by making some of these small decisions to ready, fire, aim, to just start, which seems a little frustrating, but sometimes you have to break your ruminating cycle by just doing a thing, disrupt it, and go towards a solution just for that moment. And then we'll start building those pathways where you start to look for solutions instead of more problems.
Yeah. And knowing your triggers and knowing when you're most susceptible to these ruminating type of loops is really important too. And I just wanted to point out, if anyone's sort of wondering about the science behind this, or what's going on in your brain, basically there are two groups of neural networks in your brain that play a very important role in regulating your experience. And they are the default mode network and the direct experience network. Now, where a ton of this rumination and anxiety about future or past events, or if you find yourself like playing back things, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or why did I do that, or usually people either live in the past or the future. I'm like a big future. What is going to happen if this happened? And then I start building this whole entire scenario. None of it's even real, but like in my
Everyone with
mind,
anxiety is like
right. And usually people fall into one or two categories, or it can change like just based on the scenario. Like I am going to like think about, something I said 3 weeks ago to a point where it's like totally insane, or I'm going to, imagine something in the future that has not come to fruition yet. So I want you guys to know that it is the default network that is doing this to you. It's when you're engaged in a routine task where basically your mind is off. This is why this happened to this girl, Sally, when she was on a walk, okay? Because she went on a walk and she went into default mode where she was just kind of walking, and there wasn't anything like particularly strenuous about it. She was not present in the moment. So her body, her brain went to default mode network. And that is where all of this starts going on, is like, okay, I'm not present in the moment. So she went to the future. She went like, okay, in 30 days, I need to have a place to run, but that has too many hills. And in 30 days, I need a place to run. Not right now, in 30 days. And she lived in that while she wasn't actually present in the moment that she was in, because she was 30 days in the future. And that happens when you're on default. So like we talked about a couple weeks ago when we were looking at, how to like best train your brain to like be mindful in the moment and the dangers of going into default mode, because like that's when you can't like think about delayed gratification and you act very impulsively. Same thing here, is that when you're kind of like on autopilot, your brain will do this. And if you're not paying attention to it, it can really spiral like to a place that's out of control. I know.
I also think I don't if everyone else is listening to this the same way I am. It's like, oh, that's why I wake up at 3 a.m. deciding that something I said 8 years ago at 3 p.m. to that one person was a bad idea. And I'm like, what? Like, is that helpful right now? That's what I always wake up. I'm like, is this helpful right now? And I know like I've been doing this lately because, I had a conversation that really hurt my feelings. And all I do is replay it over and over when I'm going to sleep. So now I'm listening to sleep podcasts.
Okay. Okay. What you're basically doing is practicing mindfulness, because you're, instead of going on autopilot, you're giving your mind something to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't do that other thing.
Instead, because I'm like, well, that's just causing more anxiety. Like, let's put on some headspace instead, which is what I've decided. But yeah, I think like that, it just makes a lot of sense when you think about like when your sleep is disrupted, or when some of the more mundane tasks that you're doing, or you actually enjoy them. It seems to happen when you're doing tasks you kind of like are relaxing or enjoying. Like yesterday, I was on the GHD. I'm like just working out. I had 50 GHDs. I got to the top one and I just like winced at like a previous memory. And I was just like, where are you now? Ooh.
Remember that time 3 years ago when I embarrassed myself? Yeah. I'm going to think about that right now.
I was like, ooh, embarrassing. Like,
rep number 37 for some reason. Yeah. Why are we like this? Why are we like
this though?
Man, okay. Evolution. You're a real dick. You're a real dick. I also want to present the idea of overcomplicating as a safety blanket, because I do think that a lot of people will file their overcomplicating into the bucket of like, well, I'm a planner and I like to gather information and I like to know everything and I like to research. And listen, yes, you do. You're not wrong about that. However, how you're using that trait in this instance is you are using it so that you don't have to act. That's the truth. You can sit with that, and it can be a hard truth for you. But we know that when you are in a stage of overcomplicating something to a place where you're needing to say, well, it's because I'm a perfectionist or I'm detail orientated, and it is creating you to not act on the thing, you're using that. We all are using that
We all.
as a safety blanket so we do not have to act. Because if we are still planning and gathering information, we don't have to change.
Mm.
So if we stay in planning mode forever, we don't actually have to change. And that's just fine with our brain because the brain doesn't really like change.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't prefer it.
Yeah. I always think this one is very interesting because if you ever find yourself presenting something that you have decided you wanted to do and then defending the reasons why you can't do it, I think it should just set off some alarms when you hear yourself doing it, because you've already asked the question, is this working for me? And the answer was no. And now you're defending all of the reasons why you have sabotaged something. And it's totally normal. We 100% all do it because you find yourself needing to explain it, right? But if at some point you could stop and pause and say, I owe no person an explanation for this, but I do owe it to myself. So if I'm defending the behavior I would like to change, now is that serving me?
That's a hard one.
It's a hard one.
That's a hard one. I just want to punch myself in the face after hearing that sometimes, because it's just like, what do you think? You're in front of a judge and jury or something, Rachel?
Well,
Like,
yeah.
stop it. Stop defending your shit that you're not producing on and thinking that somehow is like some kind of like life preserver or something. Like, no, it doesn't work like
Doesn't
that. You
matter.
said you
Yeah.
wanted to do it. And, it is really hard because, familiar is safe. And, our brains, like, overcomplication is basically a clever way to like protect you, right?
Mm.
Your brain thinks so. So it just is using a very complex method to talk you out of changing. And that's really hard because ultimately we want to be constantly changing. And that is where, all of our dreams and goals and self-improvement and all just like the best things are lying dormant, with our ability to just stay safe. And so I think that when we kind of uncover it and say like, hey,
Mm.
you, hey, you, are you just not wanting to act? Is that why you're going to research this to death? You're going to research it for 3 weeks so that you don't have to actually change anything. Well, that's up to you, but call it what it is. Do not call it, I am just so analytical. Look at me and my analysis go. Like, nope, that's not it. Call it what it is and say to yourself, you know what? I don't think I'm ready to act on this right now. I'm not going to act on it, but I'm making a conscious choice. I'm not saying I'm researching it and, like making, because that's just more bullshit.
That's one of the things that I just like stand by no matter what, is just like, well, let's just be honest about it. Let's just have an honest conversation about it. Let's be honest with ourselves, because at the end of the day, like, you are just being honest with yourself about why something is the way it is, why you're making a choice, why you're staying in something, because like these circumstances are within your control. So you've decided to either do it or not. So let's just be honest about the decision that you're making and live by it. Let's stay with it.
I like that. I mean, being honest has always served me pretty well. And when I have not been honest with both myself or others, it's some of the worst outcomes. So I think starting from that place, and I want to talk about some action items. that we can kind of put into place today with the next little
Right now.
micro, like the
Yeah.
next little micro thing that comes along that you're like, hold on, let me overthink this. Maybe if we can just kind of stop that in its tracks with some of these little trickies, we might be able to, again, lessen the time where we're in analysis paralysis, maybe in some instances not get into it at
Eliminate
all.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which would be great. Or in a lot of cases, just recognize it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not going to change right away, but just recognizing that you're in analysis paralysis and that you're doing this as a means to not act potentially, and just like going like, okay, I'm recognizing that. I'm not going to do anything about it right now, but like I see it.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. But you got to know, we are able to bring you this incredible content each week and talk to you about all of the pressing matters in health and fitness because of our successful TTSL workout program.
We have incredible coaches, movement demos, and just different cycles all the time. So we take the thinking out of your training every day.
If you would like to join us, please go to ttsldaily.com and pick out your package. You are going to love every day of fitness.
So little trickies. Trick number 1. You need to take this just like as a mantra. If you're an overthinker, action over research. So like you don't have to fully understand something in order to get started. In fact, that's not even the best way to learn something. The best way to learn it is not to over research it to death and then try to do it. It's actually just to do it. So if you're committed to the fact that something is going to require you to do more research, counter that with one action item. So let's take our girl, Sally. She's decided that she needs more research to decide what's going to be the best route for her to run. She doesn't want to have too many hills. She needs to figure out distances, like whatever. She needs to do some more research. Okay, that's fine. However, we're going to counter that with one action item. Tomorrow, I'm going to do 25 air squats. That's it. You don't have to get any further or closer to the solution. You just have to say, this needs more research. And in the meantime, here's how I'm going to put one action item in that has nothing to do with the reasons I can't solve that. One action item. And you could, we had a lady that wanted to start counting macros. And she was like, I need to do way more research on this before I can. Okay, that's great. Tomorrow, try to eat 2 veggies with each meal. Like counter, yes, okay, some things are going to need more research. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. It's not, don't research anything ever again. It's just counter it with one action item so you're actually moving towards your goals, and it's not something that just goes like into the researched forever like recycle bin.
It just dies there.
It just dies.
It just dies there. And I love, just realizing that like maybe something just does need a little more research, or this is something that a need that I have to fulfill over here, but I am going to counter it with an action item is a really important part of that. I just would love to point out too for everyone, that a curiosity mindset can get you a long way if you can just look at things a little bit more curiously rather than needing to fully understand it and needing to be super proficient before you do it, and just looking at it with a little more curiosity of like, I wonder. That's how I started my first CrossFit class. I wonder what they're doing over there. Like, I wonder what they're doing over there. And that really like goes into so many aspects of your life. I wonder if I could do this. I wonder if I could lift this much weight. It just really trickles into something that becomes less of a heavy burden of like, well, I need to fully understand it before I need to lift completely perfectly. I need to understand every aspect of a deadlift before I even attempt one. Like, I wonder if I could just deadlift the bar. I'm just curious. I wonder if I could do it. And I'm just going to I'm gonna try it because all I'm doing is wondering over here. It's like so like passive, you know what I
And
mean?
so
Like
innocent.
I'm just innocent. Like I'm just curious. And
Could
I
I?
think it can just be like some as we get older, like a curiosity mindset is a thing that that is taught in therapy, because what you always want to be curious with people is that you don't want to impose something that sounds really abrasive, or you just want to be curious about their feelings. Like, why would you think that would be helpful? Or like, tell me more about that, like in a really curious way. And I think it would be very helpful for all of us to look at our own feelings with a little more curiosity, and our own experiences with a little more curiosity, rather than judgment, shame, and all the other ones we place on there. And just maybe a little more wonderment, so maybe we might be able to answer the question ourselves.
I love
Uh,
that.
Thanks. Our next one is categorizing our thoughts. Only two categories are needed here. Is this helpful or is this not helpful? Which you can decide for yourself, but it also requires you to be very honest with your answer. Is this helping me or is this harmful to me? Is this mindset or are these patterns helpful to me or are they harmful to me? And that might help you figure out your next steps.
I think it stops you in your track, which is what we want to do when we go into that default mode. Is we want something to like shake us out of that and be like, hey, remember, like, this is, we're living real life over here and it's this date, not 30 days in the future. But like, if at any point our girl had said to herself, okay, oh my God, I don't know where I'm going to do this run. Is it helpful or not helpful for me to try to decide this right now? This is going to start in 30 days from now. Is it helping me to try to figure this all out today? Or is it not helping me? Is it making me feel overwhelmed? Just stopping to just categorize the ruminating thoughts, the thoughts that are getting out of control, the thoughts that are seeming to go on autopilot, just stopping and saying, hey, I see you here and I'm putting you in a bin. And that doesn't mean that I never am going to think about this again. It doesn't mean I have to push it down and be like, no, you can't think about that, because we know what happens when you try to do that. That's all you can think about. It's none of that. It's just categorizing it and saying, hey, I see you. You're not a helpful thought. I'm not going to fight you, but I'm identifying you. Bitch. Okay.
Bitch. Well, because your brain can lie. It's just we don't want to say that, but it's a thing. Like, your brain is sometimes just a liar and it's not helpful. It's always trying to help you survive, but it cannot be helpful to your progress sometimes, and you have to be the only person that's going to be able to check that. Our next one is the best way is irrelevant. So this is one that I know a lot of our ones or overthinkers are like, well, I'm just going to find the best, the most efficient, the least hilly, the best way that I can succeed here is where your mind is at. And yes, that serves you in other ways. But the best way to do a thing is to just do it. Like, the best time to plant a tree is to just do it, because when we boil it down, if you either do it only perfectly or never at all, the best way was just to do it imperfectly, right? The best way was just to do it on the hills, on the worst road. On the worst road in your entire town was better than sitting out, right?
But you got to put it in those terms, right? Like, you have to come all the way around and say, okay, is there a best way to do this? Yeah, there might be. But like, it might not be for me. If the best way to run a Murph is like on a completely flat, super awesome road with just a crystal cool ocean breeze blowing at 70 and
Magical conditions.
Slightly downhill at the end, and like, okay, yeah, sure, that's great, but the fact is like, ideal conditions are not going to present themselves that often. So
And
if
they're
you,
not even life.
they're not even
When
life. Like,
when do you go through these circumstances where you have like ideal conditions? I don't know if like it has been the internet or, what has presented this idea in our minds that everyone in Air Bunnies is living under these ideal conditions or like has this ideal family or this ideal life or like any of these things. I don't know. It might be the internet that's contributed to the thought process of things needing to be ideal to, even be in the realm of starting or, to be worthy of, attempting, which you might uncover might be some of the reasons why you're not trying in the first place or why you might be overcomplicating something. But there are no ideal conditions and we're not searching for them. Who
we're
cares?
not looking for ideal conditions because they literally don't exist. And all they do is act as a roadblock. So, just coming to terms with the best way is it may be out there. People do this a lot with their nutrition. They
Oh,
spend
yeah.
47 hours researching whether or not keto is better than intermittent fasting, right? And at the end of all that, they start neither. Had we used that time to say, what I really learned in like the third grade was like vegetables are usually pretty good.
Water.
Water is decent for you, right? And we had just instead said like, yeah, there is a best way to eat. Yeah, that's cool and everything. But like I have like a basic knowledge and I'm just going to go off of that just for now. And if I want to keep researching, that's cool, but for now, I'm going to drink some more water. And if we all did that with every one of these kind of like big decisions or small decisions, if we
Yeah.
all said there is a best way, but I don't give a shit about it right now because I
Yeah.
just got to start. Man, I mean, oh God, now I have to figure out how to take my own advice. How am I going to do it?
Well, here's the thing. It's something that I really love to bring up is that like we are all a work in progress. Some of these ideas are presented and you might find yourself doing it one time and that's the win. If you do this in one time in one aspect of your life, it's the same as, doing, half the workout instead of none. If you just present this idea and you can be aware of it and see in some circumstances where you might be practicing this thought process or you might be adjusting it in some ways, that's really a win because the more you learn and the more you grow and the more you work on self-improvement and self-growth, honestly, the more you uncover that needs to be fixed anyway. Like not like fixed, but the more you uncover there because the more you know, the more you want to know. So you start, it's just this never ending path of like, we're all working on it. We're all, working to get better and, put some of these things in places that will serve us individually. And maybe yours is fitness and maybe, mine is interpersonal relationships or, overcomplicating that to the point of like, well, is this the perfect person for me? I don't know. What if this, whoa, future telling, like how is this working
Perfect
for
person.
yeah,
See
right? Like,
number
well, it's the
3.
same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing as like the perfect circumstances for your
It is.
run. Like, is this
Yes.
the perfect person? Like, we just have these areas of our lives where they present itself. We're overcomplicating as a form of self-sabotage, knowing it and addressing it in some of the ways that we've presented today will be helpful. It might be
I
fitness, it
I
might
can
be life.
I can personally vouch for categorizing thoughts and the best way is irrelevant that I have put these in within the past year and they actually have helped me tremendously.
Yeah.
I'm still working on action over research, but I it's in there. It's in there and I'm going to start working on it, but I can vouch for like categorizing thoughts has made like a huge difference for me.
Yeah.
Like helpful or not helpful, you belong in one of the bins.
Mm.
But you guys, let us know some instances, like get your experiences out there too, because people hearing other people like overcomplicating things, I can't even tell you how many people responded to this woman that posted this like, oh my god, I totally get this.
Yeah.
So get in the group, get in the app, normalize this, but like also let's think about ways in which we can eliminate as many self-sabotaging behaviors as possible, because they ain't serving.
They ain't serving.
They ain't serving.
And we're eliminating things that are not serving us.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Have a great week, guys.